What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Pitts here with the greatest Bowie State University head softball coach at Powell. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great, Terrence, man. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, man. It's been a couple months since that, but it feel like it's been a couple months when it really only been about a month and some change or so, right?
Yeah. Times go
So,
by
Coach,
fast, man.
so listen, let's talk to the people. Let's start from the beginning, right? Before the season started, right?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts and before the season began
Yeah.
on what your expectations were of your team.
So before the season started, I kind of looked at my notes actually a couple days ago just to kind of see where my thoughts were. And always, the goal is always to end up, kind of being on top. But going in,
Right.
because we had so many freshmen coming in, I knew that was
Uh-huh.
going to take some time to kind of gel, to kind of make, really try to get our stride. But my focus was really, kind of building on what we had done the year before. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But I didn't, I wasn't completely, didn't completely have a roadmap on how that was going to go. But
Right.
we were going to figure it out on the way. So my goal going in was like, hey, let's just build on what we already have.
Okay. And when you but when you say let's build on what we have, you brought in 11 you brought in a good amount of new freshmen to build on what you have. So even though you had the foundation built, you still had to replace important pieces of that foundation with freshman players.
Yeah, and that was a challenge. You know what I mean? I really had to try to push early to try to see, kind of what we were going to have. You know what I mean? Honestly, we were trying to push and trying to make some diamonds. You know what I mean?
Right.
We really were trying to grind and really trying to figure out, who's going to show up. And because we had 11 freshmen, and we really needed those freshmen to come in and light a spark and be a part of what we were doing, and they would end up buying in.
Yeah. And before we got to CIAA play, we had the Spartanburg, South Carolina tournament between the CIAA and the SEAC. If we can get into talk a little bit and touch on that before we get into your team CIAA play, take me through your thoughts with this being the first time you hosted it, and what your expectation is going forward for the tournament.
Wow, that's a great question. So the expectation, kind of taking over, being the host was something that it just kind of fell in my lap, and I just thought it was really important for us to continue it. As far as us playing in it and all the teams that was involved, all the
Right.
HBCUs, all the SAIC, CIAA, I think it's a great event, man. I just, we all come together, we all compete hard. The talent is on display. I think, going into it, that was a vision, but to see it come to fruition and to see it out there all in for for the spectacle that it was and that it is,
Right.
I think it's a really, really good thing that we've latched on to, and want to try to keep it growing.
And when talk about the importance of what that play does for your team going into uh, tournament or not tournament, but CIAA division and conference play.
Yeah. So what it does for us is it gives us a good idea of what conference, and really we're talking about our freshmen earlier. What it really does, it gives our freshmen a complete understanding of HBCU's, you know, tournament style, championship style softball, and
Yeah.
that looks a little bit different in conferences, but I know in the SAIC and the CIAA, cheering, you know what I mean? Cheering loud, cheering, getting, having those special cheers for different people on your team and on the other team. You know what I mean? That is really exciting, and I mean, that's part of the SAIC CIAA culture, and so when you get the
Yeah.
chance to see that, it helps us when we get into the conference because it's similar.
Yeah. Not only that, you guys got to go up against, anytime when we say iron sharpen iron, you got to go up against teams like Edward Waters and Tuskegee,
Yeah,
which were, and I said, to you during the tournament, like, listen, the fact that, like, I think both games you lost by 1 run or 2 runs, right? And you
yeah,
talk about teams that are, technically, they've been the cream of the crop of the CIAA, and for the Bowie State Bulldogs to not only, really, I don't want to say manhandle, but the way they breezed through some of the games, when they got to the tournament and when they got to the games against Edward Waters and Tuskegee, they still was able to hold water, right? They still showed that no matter who we play against, we can still play with the best of them. Even when you guys went to Morgan State, score was the game outcome didn't go in your favor, but there was a lot of promise. And there were a lot of things, a lot of good things to take away from those games.
for sure, for sure. In terms, we go into every game. Basically, my motto is basically we're not scared of anybody, but we respect everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we go in with the mindset that we're gonna compete no matter D1, mid majors, good D2s. It doesn't matter. We're gonna compete against everybody. And speaking of the SAIC and the CIAA, and actually we've added what we did this year. And I don't want to jump ahead, but actually I just got responses back. I sent emails out. HBCU softball did a top 10 list. And so I took that top 10 list and invited all the top 10 players, all the top 10. And so we've gotten 8 of the 10 responses that say they're going to be at the SAIC CIAA. Lane's going to be there. Albany State's going to be there. Edward Waters, Bowie, Virginia State. And I also spoke to Stillman today. Stillman was actually the number 1 in the HBCU softball. Stillman said they were coming. And then I also reached out to Lincoln Memorial because they were number 10. And they said they needed to know the dates, and it's possible that they will make it too. So we're gonna have a showdown, man. We're gonna be able to have a showdown. Coming this February, man. I'm excited. So I know I
You
jumped
got
ahead
you got
until we
you
talk
got
about
you got
SIC.
me excited. You got me excited. And that's the thing, it's sometimes it's hard, especially when it's Bowie games, right? It's hard to really sometimes be able to focus on the game, be a fan, but also at the same time, given the stance of, working with Bowie TV, having to be honest, in regards to what we see and what I'm saying. And this just be so hard because as I'm taking pictures or I'm doing interviews, I catch myself in moments cheering. I'm like, wait, you really can't cheer too loud. But man, when I tell you, just from the growth from last year going into Spartanburg, and just watching how the freshmen integrated so fast, and not only that, but they set themselves apart because after a while, even during that tournament, you couldn't tell who was freshman and who was not.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's really the goal. After we get through, after we get through a quarter of the season, they're not freshmen anymore. They're not freshmen on the field because the experience that they have had has pushed them to sophomore, has pushed them to, those kind of experiences on the field. So they may be freshmen in the classroom, but on the field, they've had so many experiences, they're not freshmen anymore. So that's really the
Absolutely.
goal. And that's one of the things that we try to do with the SAIC CIAA. We try to get a lot of games in. We try to get a lot of meaningful games in that are, really really competitive. And so that helps us
Yeah.
grow really fast.
And this year, as we come from the tournament, you come back home, you're playing games. You played quite a few games that were out of conference before you got into conference games. And at one point, the schedule and the record wasn't looking so well. And you can sense, frustration on the coach, on the player's part. How were you able to keep your team mentally locked in, even though the record didn't display exactly what Bowie State softball was, or what Bowie State softball is.
We were so basically, and one of the things I tell them, let's just keep our heads down and let's just keep pushing. We're gonna count them up in the end, but right now let's don't look up. Let's just keep fighting. Let's just keep working hard. You know what I mean? We'll look up in the end. We'll count them up. But right now, what we need to do is just kind of focus in on just us, day by day, getting better individually, collectively. I'm talking staff, I'm talking coaching staff, team managers, everybody. Let's just focus in on getting better day by day, and then we'll count them up in the end and see where we at. But right now, let's don't look up. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's really what we were trying to do. Just don't look up. We'll keep pushing, and like I said, we'll count them up in the end.
how hard is it for you to not look at last year's success, and then when you're going into this year's success, and you get to a midway point, and you compare? How hard is it to not compare where you were last year at the midway point to where you are or when you are in the current midpoint during the year?
Uh, Honestly, I did not, because we were so deep in the grind, Billy. So I didn't have a chance to kind of look up and look back. It's like, oh, what we did last year. I just didn't. We were so focused on you know getting back to the championship, winning more games, getting better every day. I just didn't really have a
Yeah,
chance to kind of look back in the middle of the season and say, "Oh, we were here." You know what I mean? I just because it wasn't gonna help. So I was like, I could not bring all of those wins that we had the year before. I couldn't bring them with me. So let's just really focus in on, looking forward. And I know it sounds cliche, but really, that I just didn't have time to kind of look back. The only thing I was looking for
yeah.
is looking forward and getting better every day, every rep, every opportunity.
The CIAA softball tournament is here. I think the first game was against Fayetteville State, I believe.
Yeah.
And you go in that game, you struggled a little bit offensively a little bit, but the bats came around and the runs came when they needed to. How were you able to, or what were your words to your team during that game and then after that game? So right now we're talking with Coach Ed Powell, Bowie State University head softball coach. Earlier in the conversation, we spoke about the importance of um, the games that he plays and that they play when it comes to Spartanburg, South Carolina tournament between the CIAA and the SEAC, in which my observation when it came to Bowie was that they were playing against teams that were supposed to be significantly better, or they had players that were known, and Edward Waters, as I mentioned earlier, or Tuskegee. And when it came to the tournament, it appeared that Bowie was able to hold their own. And as the season went along, there was some struggles with the Bulldogs. They did struggle a little bit coming out the gates, but the struggles were against teams like Morgan and teams like Millersville, teams that were not in the CIAA. So even though they were counted as losses, I counted it as a better experience for your players. Anytime you play against talent that is supposed to be up, that's like playing JV versus varsity. Anytime JV play against varsity, you always want your JV players to play at a high level despite the opponent that they're playing. And it's supposed to sharpen them, it's supposed to help them get them better, supposed to, encourage them, the confidence builder. I can do it against these guys. I should be able to dominate anybody that's in my path that is on my level. So, early on, Bowie did, they dealt with some defeats, some losses that, really shouldn't have been defeats and losses, but that counts to the credit of the players and the leadership of the players, as well as the coaches, to keep the players mentally locked in, even when it seemed that the season was not going as planned, which often happens, right? That happens within any sport. You're going to have seasons where everything's not going to go as planned, but sometimes you gotta start over. You gotta go back from the beginning. You gotta try again. Then you gotta come back, and then you gotta go even harder. It's part of the game. It's part of baseball. It's part of softball. So other than that, they were able to, get the ship right, hit it in the right direction. Got to the CIAA softball tournament. They played against Fayetteville State first, even though they started off sluggish with their bats. Defensively, they were on point, and that's kind of where Coach and I had left off at in regards to what was going on with his team during that time against Fayetteville. Now, when I remember, Bowie had already won the CIAA championship the year before for softball. So this year, it was really about defending their crown, defending their throne. It was really about showing that Bowie was not a one-hit wonder, even though Bowie was in the CIAA softball tournament the year before, and they were runners-up to Claflin, right? So then last year, they go back to the CIAA softball tournament. They beat Claflin. So that's 2 years in a row that Bowie State and Claflin has met. And that's a 1-1 record where Claflin took the first one, Bowie State took the second one. Here we running into the third year. Bowie State's trying to make their repeat. So initially, early on, again, the bats weren't moving as they liked them to, but defensively they were able to keep themselves in games. As the tournament went on, the bats started to come around. The You could tell the confidence that they already had. It was heightened. You could tell it was coming back, but more importantly, it was coming back with the swagger of like, you know, um, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We are the defending champions, and you still got to go through us. So looking forward to, hopefully, coach is able to jump back in with us. But while we wait for coach, I want to go ahead and play a couple snippets of some videos in regards to the CIAA softball tournament. One of the videos, I do apologize now, does not have audio, but I would encourage you to, just check it out. One of them does, and the one that does have the audio, we're going to go ahead and pull that up for you now. And shout out to Dr. Bro of Bowie State University and all her support. So when I tell you, and that was a snippet of, everything that took place during that CIAA weekend, and it shows, man, the bats came around, and you had multiple home runs. It got kind of rough for the Bulldogs because they lost one of their best players, and Jay, the center fielder, and it they were able to still rebound. And the next video I want to play more so is it has audio, but I just want to show you the spirit in which Bowie State has, and it doesn't just reside in the players. It also trickles down to the president of of Bowie State University. So let's go ahead and take a listen. I'm gonna pull that video up for you. Still wasn't able to get Coach back, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and pull this up.
Y'all know we had to go two-time. Got the president.
So when I tell you that these young ladies had an amazing time, so they ended up playing against Claflin again for the third year in a row. Two great teams, a hard fight game, and some of the adverse weathers. It was raining cats and dogs the entire game, and the ladies were troopers for both teams. It was a game that um, they both gave their all. And like I said before, even we're talking with Coach Ricky, shout out to Coach Ricky from Claflin University, because they too ended up playing that game with quite a few freshmen. And I don't know. I asked Coach Ricky this. I wanted to ask Coach Powell this. I know he has some technical difficulties on his end, but it seems like the CIAA softball tournament goes through Bowie State and Claflin. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if that continues. We'll see if that continues on throughout this year. But again, thanks again for joining me, Pitts and Push Sports Talk Radio, Pitt Sports Zone, Bowie TV. And as always, follow us on everything: iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. For those who joined us and stay with us, I definitely appreciate it. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties with Coach. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening.